And Prime Minister Kaja Kallas first. Dear ladies and gentlemen of the press, dear Christianis, dear Ingrid, I'm very happy to welcome you here in Tallinn. And this year Estonia holds the chair of the Baltic Cooperation. I will start with what we discussed first, which is support for Ukraine. And of course, it is a very significant topic for all of us still. We have increased our assistance to Ukraine and we have invited the others to do the same. It is of key importance that we can see the results as quickly as possible, including results at the battlefield. Aid to Ukraine must not be too late and it should not be fragmented. Russia is preparing for a new large-scale offensive and our assistance to Ukraine must be sufficient in order to confront it. But that's not enough, because this assistance must help Ukraine to push Russian troops out of its territory. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania have provided assistance to Ukraine on a historic scale. To think how many lives would have been saved if many countries would actually do the same. We are all checking our warehouses, our inventories, but this is not enough anymore. Our defense industries need to produce more. Russian war crimes must be followed by punishment. We have a broad consensus that when it comes to the crimes of aggression, then people has to be held liable and states are looking for the best possible option to do so. Political and diplomatic process has gained momentum and sooner or later it will end with a judicial process. If this aggression against Ukraine would have not taken place, then no other crimes of war would have taken place either. Everybody supporting the crime of aggression must bear responsibility. Nobody should get away with impunity. So to this end, Estonia supports the establishment of an international special court for the investigation of the crimes of aggression. We also discussed the use of frozen assets. And the European Union must come up with the suitable solution, and this is the message we're going to take to the European Council next week. We can also see that outside the European Union, some countries are looking for solutions and have found solutions, Canada, for example. So I've also asked our Minister of Justice to make suggestions, and I hope that these conclusions will contribute to finding a quick common solution in the European Union. Dear friends, I have to say that I'm really disappointed when it comes to the proposal of the International Olympic Committee to allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to participate in the Paris Olympic Games. Russia has been now destroying Ukrainian nation and the state and the people for a year. Russia has killed hundreds of Ukrainian athletes, including Olympic champions and world champions. Now, to allow athletes to enter the Olympic arena at the price of blood of Ukrainians, is that a fair play? Taking into account that Russia is using sport as a propaganda tool and their athletes are actually Russian soldiers. When you're looking at the Tokyo Olympic medalists, then 45 of them were actually members of the Russian army. And the Beijing Winter Olympics, 1 in 3 members of the Russian team was actually serving in the Russian army. It is disgraceful to place Ukrainian athletes in the situation where they have to face Russians in the sports arena. Olympic movement should not put athletes from all the other countries in this situation. We have to choose between their conscience and for their life, between their life's work, which is competing. I would like to stress the idea of the Olympic moment. What is the message if we allow Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete at the Olympics? I hope that the Olympic and sports movement will face its own values and will make a right decision. Dear ladies and gentlemen of the press, today we also discussed the strengthening of NATO's defense capability. Our goal for NATO Vilnius summit in July is clear. NATO's regional plans must be approved. NATO's deterrence and defense posture at the eastern flank should be strengthened. In this changed security situation, we also must review the agreements for NATO's defense investment. 2% for defense expenditure is no longer sufficient. It's the minimum. In addition to military security, we also have to look at the security of supply and energy security. This provides security for our people and affordable prices. Offshore wind energy cooperation is key to achieving climate neutrality. The Estonian and Latvian joint offshore grid project is very important for us. Hopefully this year we will receive EU funding for carrying out surveys. It is good that Marienburg Agreement on wind energy targets have now been formally adopted by the European Union. We must cooperate on the EU level in order to increase funding for renewable energy and grid infrastructure. Now, talking about common infrastructure projects, of course, we have to mention the Rail Baltica. Last week, our transport ministers agreed on changes that will hopefully help to increase the speed of construction. This is very important when it comes to future funding. Thank you all once again. And next meetings during the Estonian presidency will be as constructive as today's. Thank you. And now I would like to invite Krišjānis Kariņš to take the floor.
Thank you, Kaija, Ingrida. Thank you, Kaija, for organizing today's meeting. I wish you all the best during this year when you take over the baton as a presiding country. And I think that we will achieve great success, and today is a great example to that. Thank you for that. I believe that our main topic, in my mind, is about two things. First, about strength and power. Second, about unity. For us, it is very important, considering these war circumstances, considering this war in Ukraine, that each of us individually becomes stronger at personal level, at national level, that we continue strengthening our economies, that we continue strengthening our defense capabilities and also military capabilities. But it is not enough, considering these circumstances, that we as a country just think of ourselves. And the same applies to each and every person in our societies, because we live together with others, and our power is in our unity, nationally and also, and in particular, speaking about the unity of our three Baltic countries. What we have achieved so far during the last 30 years, what we have developed, what we have proven, this is an example to other allies, how important it is to work together. And if you have disagreements, you have to discuss and find common solutions, because if we stick together, this is how we will efficiently be able to withstand the imperialist aggression of Russia. Of course, as three Baltic countries, as heads of three Baltic countries, we have to do everything for not only our three countries to stay together, but also the EU and all the NATO countries. We have this power within us, we have these abilities within us, but the key is our unity, maintaining our unity, that we can see very well today in Tallinn. The war in Ukraine, it looks like it will not end quite soon, because Moscow doesn't show any willingness to limit the military activities, vice versa. They mobilize more and more people, speak about more mobilizations. It just points to the fact that Moscow intends to start a long-term war in Ukraine. It means that we have to understand that in the long term we'll be able to oppose them, we'll have to continue to help Ukraine with any means possible. First and foremost, it means military assistance. So far, Latvia has invested in Ukraine more than 1% of our GDP. And almost every week we make new decisions on what else we will be able to send to Ukraine. Also in Latvia, the society supports Ukraine, keeps supporting Ukraine. People keep donating money, their time, and they keep sending more and more humanitarian goods, medical goods, also vehicles. everything that Ukraine may need, including generators due to problems with energy infrastructure. All of that continues, not only from the government side, but also from the society side. We have to understand that the threat, and the only threat, is that we in the West, in one society or the other, could start to relax, could get tired of this, because Moscow will count on that, and they will work and they will focus on us giving up. They will mislead and they will speak about peace, and peace can be achieved by not sending support to Ukraine. These are false news, fake news. We need, of course, peace, but we can achieve peace when Ukraine wins this war against the imperialist Russia. Then we will have peace. There is no other option, and we have to remind our societies, and in particular our European and NATO allies, that we cannot relax. As 3 Baltic countries, we will serve as an example by investing a major percentage of our economy in supporting Ukraine. From the security point of view, we also look forward to the NATO summit in Vilnius in summer this year. And here, or in this regard, it is important to achieve that at the NATO level, these commitments that were made in Madrid to strengthen our Baltic security by creating these combat-ready troops, we have to implement these decisions. It is very important that in our 3 Baltic countries we keep investing in our own military capacities, and also in Latvia next week we'll make a decision. We will adopt our budget for this year. Unfortunately, this decision is delayed due to the new government, and this year we expect to make significant investment to improve our military capabilities in Latvia, including air defense, coast defense, and also missiles and rocket systems, including HIMARS systems. But it is not enough just for us alone to act like Latvia or Estonia or Lithuania. It is very important that our NATO allies also keep strengthening their capacity in this region, so that the war or unrest does not take place in the Baltic states, because we are ready to counter that, and we are ready to counter any potential attack from the first moment when it happens. It's very important for us. That also applies to energy security, which is very important. Of course, we have left the reliance, or we do not rely on the Russian resources anymore. Also, the natural gas is not being sold in the Baltic markets since January this year. But we have to keep developing our internal networks. We have a lot to do to achieve electricity desynchronization from the Russian market to synchronize with the European markets. For all 3 Baltic countries, this is a very important priority that requires investment, and we have to do everything possible to make these investments as soon as possible, so that we could achieve independence in our 3 Baltic countries from the Russian systems, including electricity frequency systems. So strength and power individually and together in a unity. This is what we have to focus on, and this meeting just confirms that Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania are ready to continue to work together. And thank you, Kaja, once more for taking over the presidency, and this year we will continue doing everything to strengthen ourselves and also to strengthen the NATO unity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like the Prime Minister of Lithuania, Ingrida Šimonytė.
So for nearly 9 years, the Russian aggression has been going on against Ukraine. And for nearly a year, Ukraine has to withstand a full-scale, brutal Russian invasion. Yet we know that the criminals who have launched this war, their objectives go beyond the Ukrainian borders. And they are, first of all, threatening democratic societies, Europe as an idea, their security, values, and freedom. Russia is seeking to disrupt the rule-based international order. The upcoming months will be very difficult. They may be even decisive in terms of this war. So we have to strengthen and enhance our support to Ukraine. First of all, the military support. I'm glad that the Baltic states have been and still are among the most active military aid supporters proportionally to their populations and their economy sizes, and our continuous support to the Ukrainian energy sector that is constantly being destroyed by Russia. This is very important. I'm glad that the citizens of our countries are so focused. They have opened their houses to Ukrainian refugees and they support the Ukrainian struggle in every way possible. And it gives us as politicians a mandate from the society to do what we are doing. And everyone contributes to this. Every single person, every single company, every single institution, every single governmental agency, every single politician. Right now, we in Lithuania have a huge society action during which the society is crowdfunding money for another package of military support to Ukraine, in this case military raiders, and only in a matter of days the Lithuanian people have crowdfunded millions of euros. And this shows that people care about this issue, they are not tired, they are working on a daily basis to make the Ukrainian victory come earlier. It helps us, politicians, speak not only on our own behalf, but on the behalf of our people. We have to keep on pressuring Russia, we have to isolate it in the international community, we have to enhance our sanctions both on Russia and on its allies. Also, we have to ensure Russian accountability for their war crimes against Ukraine, including the most important one, the crime of aggression. And this is only possible only by establishing a special tribunal. Therefore, we have to find international support for such a tribunal. Lithuania is getting ready for the NATO summit in Vilnius, which we hope will show the alliance's unity and solidarity. NATO has to be ready for a long-term Russian threat, have to stay focused on its main task, which is collective defense. Therefore, one of the main NATO summit in Vilnius priorities is deterrence and defense, including the enhancement of the NATO eastern flank to implement the NATO forward defense solutions. The Russian war in Europe showed the risks related to military industry, to the lack of spending on defense. While getting ready for the NATO summit in Vilnius, this has to be one of our priorities, as Kaya has already mentioned. This Russian full-scale aggression against Ukraine showed everyone who had any doubts what the Russian real face is, what their real intentions are, and what measures Russia used to achieve its objectives. I hope that the NATO summit in Vilnius will be a breakthrough, and we will start discussing about the only possible European security architecture, which does not include Russia. There is no doubt that in this meeting we had to discuss the very important infrastructure projects which are moving on. We are working on them on a daily basis, our institutions, our companies, in order to connect to the European grids as fast and as smoothly as possible. But this is our daily work. We have been doing this, we are doing this, and we will be doing this. And in this year, while Kaja is presiding over the Baltic Council of Ministers. I hope that we will be able to achieve a lot and see our achievements during these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now there's a possibility for the members of the press to ask questions. Please introduce yourselves and whom you would like to address this question. And then the questions could be asked in English or using the other tongue of the Prime Minister's. Tarmo Maiberg, Estonian TV. And I have a question.
If ROC decides or EOC decides to give its approval that they can participate the games through Asian qualification. And also Baltic states have been very strong to give thanks to Ukraine. Do you plan to support also or to start that kind of campaign also in case of jets?
Question?
Yeah, questions to all of you. Thank you.
Russian sportsmen would not fake it that they are under some neutral flag, because there is no neutrality in the current world. And boycotting the Olympic Games is one decision, but it might not be as impressive as keeping Russian and Belarusian sportsmen out of the games altogether. So I think this is the preferred option. Now coming to all sorts of weapons that can be and should be delivered to Ukraine. You know that we have a general support towards Ukraine fight, and we know that fighting on the ground every day, they know their needs and they know their plans and they know what's crucial for them. So of course we will be supportive of Ukraine requests to deliver more and faster, because as I mentioned, the next months to come might be very important in this fight. And it is in Russia's interest to keep everybody tired and sort of feel the fatigue of this this aggression does not ending and sort of seemingly no end of story in any foreseeable future. So it is not in our interest. It's not in the interest of any democratic country that this goes on in line with Putin's initial thinking. So of course we will be supportive and we will support Ukraine's requests to the country that are able to provide the relative weapons to do so.
So I personally, in my government, and even our National Olympic Committee would condemn and find morally reprehensible the fact that during this war that Russian or Belarusian athletes would participate in any guise in the Olympics. We think that is simply the wrong way to go. Regarding equipment and military hardware to Ukraine, as I said, Latvia, we have already donated more than 1% of GDP, over 370 million euros of military hardware. Our Air Force does not have fighter jets. We have helicopters, and we have donated almost all of the prior existing helicopters to Ukraine with the simple idea that they can certainly put them to much better use to fend off the Russians than we can right now in Latvia. The Ukrainian military knows what kind of hardware it needs to win the war. This hardware exists among NATO countries, and we fully support Ukraine's requests for equipment that will allow them to win the war.
Thank you. I think our efforts should be on convincing our other friends and allies that participation of Russian and Belarusian athletes is just wrong. So boycotting is a next step, but I'm sure that people will understand why this is necessary to not let the Russian and Belarusian athletes compete, but the others will compete. As to the weapons and weapon systems, I think it's clear and should be clear now for everybody that the price of the aggression goes up with every hesitation, with every delay. So we should give all that we have, that we can give, and we have said this to our allies as well. Of course, allies have different things that can give, and of course every ally is also a democratic country that is dependent on their public opinion and support. So our role is to convince and talk to our allies to show, as I said, the price of aggression going up with the hesitations. Thank you.
Next one, please.
Hi, Herman Kelamäes. To all three of you, this is about February 24th of this year. You all receive briefings on the security situation in Ukraine. So what will the situation be like on February 24th in Ukraine? What might happen? What might Russia do? And also, how do your countries plan to commemorate the one-year anniversary of the invasion?
I start from this second question. We decided to once more show the public support that we feel in our population, rather than have formal sort of parliamentary sessions or formal resolutions and decisions, which are, I mean, nothing new to say, because I think all the words have been said already. And it's Russia that is crossing next and next black line as the war goes on. So we decided, or it's rather society decided, to have a mass rally of a fundraise that is happening now, as I mentioned, and they are fundraising heavily, and there is a very big scale launch with our national broadcaster participating, but also the non-governmental organizations that raise money for further military support for Ukraine, regardless of the support that our country, as government, as a Ministry of Defense is already providing, but also this shows that so many people participate, and it's still important for us. We are not tired, we are on it, we are working every day, and I think this is the best way to commemorate the date that is, the aggression is going on for the 9th month, so for the 9th year, and this invasion for a year already. And I don't think this is very much rationale in thinking that what might happen on a particular day, when you know that every day the same happens, the war happens, people are being killed, houses are being destroyed, energy system is being destroyed. So we know this habit of Kremlin, of a particular weirdness to attach some importance to numeric things, but I don't think that should change our behavior in any way, because 23rd or 25th or 11th or 10th, we still need to do the same. We need to ensure that support is delivered to Ukraine, and Ukraine can win the war. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as our government was getting intelligence information last year, we decided before February, before January, I believe it was December, to provide Ukraine with weapon systems. At the time, these were Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. We made the decision, and the arrivals came just in time, just before this broad war broke out. And we are currently in the process of continuing the same with additional helicopters, additional Stinger missiles, additional drones, and a greatly ramped up training of Ukrainian soldiers. So we are not looking to commemorate in that sense. We see that unfortunately the need has not lessened, so we are stepping up our own aid. And I can also, as I said before, comment very happily that interest and support among civil society has not weakened at all and continues just as strong, because everyone in Latvia understands that Ukraine is fighting in our place. They are fighting Russian imperialism, and we have every reason to support them in every way that we can, as long as is necessary, until Ukraine wins the war.
We see from our intelligence, as the Ukrainians have said it out as well, that Russians are planning escalating even more to commemorate this 1 year, or to show something that they have gained something during this war. As comes to Estonia and commemorating this day, as you know, it is our Independence Day. The 24th of February is our Independence Day, when we celebrate our freedom. And I really want this to be the Freedom Day again, so that it's not the dark times, but the hope and the liberty and the freedom in the end. I think Ukrainians have been able to survive for this whole war of very hard fighting, and we have been behind them, united as ever, with the European Union, with the NATO, and there is hope in that. So of course we are commemorating and also Ukrainians during this day, but we also want to have this day as a day of celebration of our freedom, and hopefully also the freedom of Ukraine.
Enough time for a really small question. Right.
Tamek from Bloomberg. What would you like to see in the next sanctions package? How are you going to avoid loopholes there? And what number would you like to see for the refined oils products price cap? And the questions for all three prime ministers. Thank you.
Who wants to start? I can start. We want to see a strong package, and of course there's not really much left. There could be also the total ban of trade with Russia that would help the bordering countries to also work with the avoidance of the sanctions. And I think this is also a very important thing that we are bringing on the European level, not only the sanctions, but the close the gap of avoidance of sanctions, really. What is right now going on is the negotiations regarding criminalizing the avoidance of sanctions, or going bypass the sanctions. And I think it's also important to have this tool, because it has two sides. One is the use of those assets for Ukraine. If there is a criminal punishment for this, then those assets can be confiscated, but also that there is a very clear sign that this is criminalized and you can't avoid the sanctions, because you have to close the loopholes, and we have to have stronger measures to do that.
Well, I would add up only briefly. As I think it's our countries who are among the most active in proposing what can be included, what can be listed in the sanctions, and we do a lot of homework for collecting evidence and supporting the factual need for the sanctions. So more sanctions and less derogations, because it's unfortunately also the part of the dance where every time we reopen a discussion about sanctions, there is a new initiative of somebody being delisted or some derogations being granted, even from days in the past. So I think this is dangerous, and this compromises on the sanctions itself. So we want stricter sanctions, high isolation of Russia, rather than something else.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Very pertinent. This is one of the topics that we discussed today. So we're all completely united that in the next sanction package, whatever there would be from day one, we have been demanding very tough sanctions, and always in the end the packages are a little slower than we would hope, but in the end they come. So we're fully united that we need to continue on. But we also talked about, and I think it's very important to look at the loopholes. And the loopholes, if we look at statistics, you see countries such as Kazakhstan, countries such as Armenia, countries such as Turkey, where certain kinds of trade is going up very high, disproportionate to what it has been in the past, and it seems quite clearly that traders are finding ways to legally trade goods, say with Turkey or with Kazakhstan or with Armenia, which are then re-sent to Russia because these countries are not adhering to the sanctions regime. So one is to work with these countries to get them on board, also following the sanctions. The second is to look for legislation across Europe to make sure that we criminalize sanctions avoidance, not only in 1 or 2 or 3 member states, but that it would be in all member states to close the loopholes, because we cannot run the risk of ever tighter sanctions and then ever broader loopholes of companies and individuals trying to avoid them. So we need to start focusing on the secondary effect of sanctions avoidance. It can be done, especially if we do this on a European level together.
For the time we have, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Prime Ministers. See you next time and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.